Hello there and welcome to Learn Bites, the show that delivers bite-sized pieces of wisdom so you can learn how to increase your efficiency and productivity, embrace your natural creativity and lead with impact. I'm Samantha Garrett from Using Technology Better, and joining me on the show today is Ingrid Jones. Ingrid is a wellbeing coach, speaker and writer, and she will tell you a little bit more about herself in just a minute. So hey, let's jump in right now and meet Ingrid. Hi Ingrid, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. I'm very excited about our discussion on creativity today. But before we jump into it, I thought you might like to elaborate a little bit about yourself and what you're passionate about.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Yes, so I am a wellbeing coach with a primary school teaching background, but my greatest passion is working with people to make shifts or changes or work through any of the blocks that they might be experienced in absolutely any area of their life, whether it be, work, business, or just a general feeling, to make a shift and be really inspired and empowered to make changes and small steps in their own life. And I do this by teaching a very specific journal process. So it's a 5-step process that's very self-reflective, that kind of harnesses the power of that pen to paper, that self-reflective time to take an inward journey to really enhance your own well-being.
And I can speak firsthand to the lovely success of your journaling process, the Diving for Pearls process, because I always like to confess to the audience if I know if I have a connection to my guests. So yeah, I think I've been doing your process for, gosh, maybe it's like 4 or 5 months now. I can't remember, but yeah, it's amazing. So I'm going to definitely link that in the show notes because if anyone's keen to get started on journaling, the process is amazing. So.
Fantastic. Yes. And so I love that you're part of the journal community. So I'll just touch on that. That is for anyone who's learned this amazing process to come and be part of. We come together via Zoom on a weekly basis to journal. And I love that part of being able to connect and everyone gets that chance to, share their own little self-discoveries at the end and things like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a special process. So awesome. All right. Well, thanks for that, Ingrid. So today with our questions on creativity, as you know, the show Learn Bites is all about being bite-sized. So I have got a 4-minute timer and we've got 8 questions. So we'll see how we go. And if we get through them all, then I'll ask you another question or you can ask me a question and we'll have a bit of a chat at the end. So if there's anything we want to elaborate on too, we can do that at the end. And I will try my hardest to give you about a 30-second warning, but sometimes I'm so enthralled in what you're saying that I will forget. So no promises on that. Anyway, So I'm going to put the timer on. Are you good to go, Ingrid?
I am ready.
Cool. The race is about to begin. All righty. First mobile phone and current phone.
Okay, my first one was a Motorola. I don't know the brand, but I just know it was like a text and call phone, little like mini brick one. And my current one, I think, is an iPhone 7. It's had it for a little while.
How would you define creativity and what do you think the key dispositions of creative people are?
I think creativity is all about, thinking and producing. So it's all about using your imagination to create and change kind of reality or life. So the dispositions for that, it means like being able to really use your imagination and problem solve and work through things and being really solution focused to just work things out and make changes as it's needed.
Oh, that's so fascinating thinking about in the process of journaling, but I might come back to that. What is the biggest myth about creativity that you've come across?
I am going to touch on 2 things. The first one is that it's all to do with artistic expression. I think that's very common, or a lot of pressure. You feel like you have to be, singing and dancing and, painting. And the other myth is that it's always like this massive aha moment that you get this like light bulb of creativity, and that's where it is. I see creativity is a bit more of a long-term thing because the more you like work on something, the more that you get the ideas and it shifts and changes, and it's part of the process of evolving and changing.
Creativity is a process. That's interesting to think about. All right. So we're up to number 4. When, where, and how do you express yourself most creatively?
At the moment, it is all of my work. So let's take the journaling process, Diving for Pearls, and my journal community. So each week, as you know, there's a different theme each week. So I am constantly just like tweaking the process and making it better and finding different ways to share it. So by that, sorry, I said that before about the theme. So there's a different theme. All that type changes, and it gets me thinking about the process in a deeper way. And then I keep thinking of how can I share it differently. So I'm turning that process into a book. And then I'm putting together like a 10-day online journal course that people could just sign up to, and, you know, all those different type of things that just help me to express myself differently in my own work. And I'm just kind of in tune to, oh, that's another great idea, and I just write that down and I just wait to see if it's the right time to work on it.
Biggest barrier to creativity?
Fear and doubt. Yourself, really. You're your own biggest barrier to most things. But for sure, that doubt or fear of what if I fail, or, you know, can I really do it, or will it work out? Things like that.
Okay, we've got a minute left.
All right.
What strategies do you use to try and overcome that barrier?
A journal. I use the process to shift my own blocks, and I love it, and it works for me every time. Getting that fresh perspective, or that feeling of like, that your own aha moment is fundamental, and we need it on a regular basis. Yeah.
Book, video, or podcast you'd recommend to others?
I love Elizabeth Gilbert, so I'm going to recommend the book Big Magic: Creative Living Beyond Fear.
Love it. And then very last question, we've got 30 seconds. What creative project would you dedicate your time and energy to if you knew it would be guaranteed to succeed?
Oh, look, I'm a little bit crafty and love all that. I actually love all the art side. I'd be like singing and playing the piano as an expert. If I could learn it, I'm a beginner at both.
You put the time into actually learning to do it.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I love. Oh my gosh! There you go. There's a timer. Yay, that's wonderful. Thank you, Ingrid. The race is done. I was going to say you won because you made it in on time.
Just like that was perfect timing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So interesting. When you were speaking about when I asked you about how you express yourself creatively, that word I always struggle with. And you were talking about continually, you know, the themes and tweaking the process and all that, which I've actually noticed, and it's really interesting to watch it evolve. But also that got me thinking too is often I think we can get caught thinking that to be creative, it's got to be something entirely new. Like, oh, I wasn't creative today because I didn't create some new thing that didn't exist before. So I found that really interesting because I think coming back to you also saying is creativity as a process. Like it's that process of continually reinventing or changing something. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Absolutely. I really think it is a process, and it is just about sort of like getting it out there and getting something going, and then you're playing with it knowing that maybe it will never ever be completely finished or done, but that's actually okay. Like that's part of, you know, when you're working on those type of projects. I know other projects do have a complete like final ending and things like that, but it's just, there's so many varying degrees of creativity.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point to think about, where anything actually has a final ending, even like, because you're right. I mean, there's some projects that kind of have like an end date and we're done now. And, you know, me coming from a technology background, often technology projects will look like that. But then I actually think that's when things go wrong, because people assume that something is finished and that we can tick it off. And when it's not given attention moving forward, that's when I certainly find in my work, people experience problems further down the track.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting food for thought. I like that. And I loved how the question about the barrier to technology and the journaling helping you through that, because I've certainly found that just generally, like, I think you're right, like we're our biggest barrier to anything. And certainly a lot of the people I've interviewed on the show have, not that they've used those words, but the barriers that they've identified are very much within them. They're not necessarily external things. So to have that kind of process to work through, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's where, like with the even with the journaling process, that ability to soften and become kinder towards yourself, like bring that curiosity to things, and that empathy or that exploring takes the pressure off right and wrong, which opens you up to try and have a go and learn from it. And, you know, like it's just, I think sometimes we feel like people are either creative or they're not. Whereas if you start going, oh yeah, there's so many elements of life that actually is a creative process, it takes the pressure off kind of thing. You're just like, oh, I'm going to be curious about this, or I wonder what the solution is, or what problem am I facing? So by asking more questions, you can sort of like work through it or realize that you are being creative.
I just love that idea of creativity as a process. I think that's so good, because you're right. Like for a very, very, very long time, I assumed I was in the not creative group. Like I totally was of that view. There was like one or the other, and I was the not. But then, yeah, thinking about like widening the definition of creativity, but then also thinking about it, that process makes a massive difference. Wonderful.
Even with this podcast, you've changed how you were in the beginning with it, or how it's grown, or there are potentials for, you know, little tweaks, or, you know, different people in the team that help you out, or things like that. Like that's creativity as well. It was one day, a while ago, it was just an idea, you know, and now it's something that you're creative.
That's really, really true. So that's something really interesting for our listeners to think about. Is it like, what are you doing, or what are you working on that is this process, and where is the creativity in that process? Sort of, particularly if you're thinking, oh, I'm not working on anything creative at the moment. Well, you probably are. It's probably just hidden in what you're doing every day. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Go on. Go on.
I love, like with Elizabeth Gilbert's tagline of that book of creative living beyond fear. So if you take the fear out of things, then you feel more on purpose, and you're more in touch with like, what feels right for you. That's creativity, you know, like that's allowing yourself to just pursue projects or work in things, and that's then you being creative.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. A lot of food for thought there. Thank you. Awesome. Before I pass over, is there anything else you would like to say, Ingrid? Anything else you want to share?
No, thank you for having me on this podcast, and thank you for being part of my community. I love having you as a journaler.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I'm more than happy to share your work and have this conversation, because I think there's such a unique perspective too, coming from that journaling lens for creativity. So, and on that lovely note, a nice segue into, where can people find you, Ingrid, if they want to learn more about the Diving for Pearls process?
They can find more under the journal workshops on my website at ingridjanejones.com. And I'm at Ingrid Jane Jones on Instagram as well. That's where people can find me.
Awesome. Lovely. And we will link it as well. So thank you. Well, you have a lovely rest of the day. And I will be seeing you anyway in the community. But anyway, we bid goodbye to our guests now, our audience now, and you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for watching the show today. It was really great to have you join us. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Ingrid, and it sparked some different ideas for thinking about creativity. I really particularly loved, as you heard in the interview, how she described creativity as a process. So that's it for the show today. But if you want to stay connected and make sure that you catch all the latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to the Using Technology Better YouTube channel. Or if you're listening to the podcast version of the show, follow the show, and then you will see all of the episodes as they are released. Now, also, we do have a fortnightly efficiency, productivity, and organization kind of themed newsletter, all my favorite topics. So if you've not already subscribed to that, there's a link in the show notes to do that too. All right, so that's it for today, but I will see you again soon for another bite-sized piece of the learning adventure that is life. See you then.